So guys, I'm going to be showing you exactly what I was doing within my 20s, how I became a multi-millionaire, the multiple businesses that I was running, and also at the same time splurging well over £20,000 a month on you name it, luxury goods, cars, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Rolls Royces, helicopters, you name it, I was doing it. And I want to explain to you the lessons that I learned across that journey and exactly where I am now, and if I was to reverse the clock, what I would do differently, and covering some of the habits of a successful millionaire. So the first point I want to cover here is that when I did make a large amount of money, I was in my 20s and I was very young. I was also the first one within my family to actually make a substantial amount of money quite quickly, especially from the investment space and trading. In hindsight, what I was doing was, I'll probably say, well risky. Not really well risk managed to start with, trading penny stocks, making a large sum of money. And with that, I wanted to do what I perceived which was wealthy. You know, I always aspired to people with supercars, nice watches, living that lifestyle. And that's exactly what I did. I was like, I've got the money, let's go spend it. So I bought the cars, I bought the watches, and so on and so forth. And one thing I quickly realized was that I didn't enjoy any of it. I realized that it was part of life, and it actually opened up a lot of doorways for me in the business space, because I think a lot of people are quite short-term thinkers, and all of a sudden, oh, he's got a nice car, let's do business with him. And I think that's quite a petty world that we live in, but that was initially what exactly I was seeing happen within this space. And something that I quickly realized that this isn't what I want to do. I don't like the idea of people wanting to work with me just because of materialistic items that I've got, rather than the skill set and talent that's actually behind that I was developing. And so from there, I really wanted to change my outlook, and that's when I first started to meet ultra high net wealth individuals. And some of the lessons that I really learned, which is my tip number one for a millionaire mindset, which has become very much goal orientated. So at this point, it was setting up financial goals. What are my goals? How am I going to achieve those financial goals? And obviously this is talking about in the hundreds of thousands at the time, but what you can do is you can always simplify this down to exactly what you're looking at from the perspective of, you know, well, how do I go from £0 to £500? How do I go from 500 to £1,000? And start putting that down. And that is one of the main things that I've learned through socializing and hanging out with other millionaires, is that becoming goal orientated, discussing how you can make a project feasible, how that is going to work, how am I going to go from that £0 to £100 in savings, and then what am I going to do with that money? But creating a blueprint for the outlook of your goal is super crucial, because it will help you attain it, and it may be longer or shorter than you necessarily anticipated, but at the same time you're going to be able to follow your blueprint on how to achieve that goal. Number two, one of the biggest parts that I've learned through investing and trading, through seeing different people, is that everybody wants money now. They want it quick. The question I always get asked is, what's the quickest way to flip my money? One thing that I've learned along the way is that the ultra high net wealth individuals understand delayed gratification. And when you understand that changing your mindset from instant gratification to delayed gratification, it's very much a big mindset shift. So what do I mean by that? Let's say if you have £10,000 right now. Well, £10,000, you can go, right, what's the quickest way to flip it? Which crypto do I buy that could go 4x, 5x, or 6x? Or let's take that £10,000 and move it into a 10 to 12% per annum return that's quite safe, either an ETF, long-term property opportunities, things like that. And all of a sudden you've now gained an extra £1,000 a year. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but through the power of understanding delayed gratification, and if you're spending your payouts that you're getting in interest from your investments, that it soon multiplies and compounds later down the line. And this is something that I've really noticed that ultra high net wealth individuals do, is understanding the metric of delayed gratification, because it's a big compound effect. You don't start buying all these super flashy things early on in life, you buy them later on once your investment is recouping continuous interest payments back to yourself. Number three is your network is your net worth. It is so true. I always heard that saying when growing up, that if 4 of your friends smoke, you're gonna be number 5. And it's so true, through understanding that your network is who you become, and who you hang out with is who you become. And it may sound very, very cliche, but it's so true, because if 4 of your friends are absolute beasts in the gym, the likelihood that you're gonna be a beast in the gym is also true. And this also reflects then into business of who do you hang around with, what business owners are you hanging around with, and you'll find that the traits of that group reflect amongst all of them. And that's the same with your earnings as well, because if you can relate to your friends that are doing really well and you're on a low salary, you then wonder, well, why aren't I on that salary? And this whole mental shift of understanding that metric will allow you to then progress a lot quicker. So just remember, it's really easy to be a loser in life, and so making sure that you don't hold back is very crucial in that journey as well, and making sure that you truly try to make a conscious effort to understand who you're hanging around with from a positive aspect and also from a negative aspect. Another one that I think is really important is living within your means, and I think the world is really screwed up with aspirations of what people aspire to. They're aspiring to wearing a Stone Island jumper and wearing a Rolex and then having a supercar and then having a large house. And all of these things are what people perceive to be wealthy. But throughout my journey of being there, doing it, getting the t-shirt, understanding it, meeting high net wealth individuals, growing my millionaire network, the one thing that I've really understood is that a lot of the people that you actually look to and aspire to are actually living paycheck to paycheck. And their lifestyle outgoings is so high that they live this high anxiety, high stress lifestyle, and it's damaging them on a month-to-month basis. And I won't name any names, but I know ultra high net wealth individuals that are making well over sort of 50 to 100,000 pounds per month that still sometimes have said, can I borrow some money? And I sit there and I find it so shocking and also hard to understand why they're doing that. But I think like when you're looking to who do you aspire to, don't be aspiring for materialistic goods, because they're not going to be there in the long run. And also, for example, like myself in my 20s where I attained quite a large amount of wealth, I also went through that phase of getting the nice watches, getting the nice cars. And I ultimately realized one thing is that what I'm doing here is I'm expending cash for the sake of living this lifestyle that ultimately at the time I thought was what I wanted, but in long term wasn't what I wanted. And now in hindsight, looking back to that, I suppose that is potentially a regret of mine, because I sit there and I think, imagine with all of that money that I was expending, and I sit here and I think it's probably well over 750k that I spent on luxury goods and items and things like that, where I sit here and go, imagine if I put that into investment over those years and there was 750k returning a 10% per annum yield, but it's a 75k a year guaranteed income that I would have had additionally now instead of not having that. And having all these items that either depreciated in value, I got rid of, don't have anymore, and things like that. And so I think there's a lesson in that, and a lesson from myself of being rich and being young at the same time. And ultimately, I hope that's something that you could potentially avoid, is that these aspirations and goals aren't necessarily what you want to achieve first. And I think my mindset has completely flipped away from that now to be focused on how do I get more time in life, and buying time is something that I find crucial. So like, for example, travel. I don't mind traveling on a private jet. Why? Because I actually buy time. I'm buying time by doing that. I don't need to wait in an airport for so long, and I can fly a lot quicker, get to the destination quicker. All right, I may only be buying 2 or 3 hours, but I'm buying additional time that I'm not sat around wasting. So when you sit there and you start thinking, what is it that I actually want to attain? Because when you buy these materialistic things, I can tell you something now, is that at the start, they're amazing. After a year, it becomes the norm, and then you sort of get bored of it. There's actually a clip from Dan Bilzerian that actually says this, and if your goals are around materialistic things, then it soon fades away. So you need to find something more than those materialistic goals. And it's so strange how I've been through that, experienced it, and sort of got the t-shirt. So I think being cautious about who you aspire to from a goal point of view is super crucial as well, because attaining wealth doesn't mean attaining necessarily luxury goods right there and then. And this comes back to that whole delayed gratification. Work on building that investment portfolio that's going to pay you a large amount of dividends in the future, of which you can then spend and do whatever you want with on these luxury goods, because it's attainable every single month through long-term investing. So the next point is being satisfied with your lifestyle. And I think this is, again, super crucial. You've got to remember that social media and everybody around you is trying to show you their best life. Okay, and this is something that I see all the time, is people putting out their best life, going on holiday, buying luxury goods, and showing ultimately they're living this big lifestyle. Now, ultimately on the backside of that, I've also seen that how much, again, those people are anxious, not satisfied in themselves, and also have no money. And that is something that you always want to be concerned about, because what is the point in living that lifestyle if it's only going to be short term? So taking a step back and actually doing things at a slower pace, not going on a holiday 4 times a year, having a small break, something that's cheap, so that you still have this investment pot that is growing for you, because you'll be surprised how quick 10 years just flies by. And if in that 10-year window that you can build up a strong investment portfolio of cash, invest into multiple assets on a reasonable outlook, you're going to be doing very well at a later stage in life, whilst those friends that were living that baller lifestyle in the early days are completely blown out, are still working for somebody else, and are still stuck in that same sort of trajectory pathway. Whereas you are gradually growing and improving because your investment outlook and your investment return is also in line with your long-term projection. And that's something that you want to have sort of in your bank of skills, of understanding, of not living above those means. And this sounds so basic to say it, but I'm sitting here saying I've done it. I learned that lesson. Lucky for me, my skill set has always been developing and growing, and so has my investments as well. But God forbid anything happened to me 3 years ago of where I couldn't do any of those investments, and I would have been stuck there in that lifestyle pattern, and it all would have ended. So don't fall for that same mistake that I did. Boring is good. That is the next point. Setting clear goals sounds so fucking boring to a lot of you, and I understand that, right? But without clear goals, you're just fucking traveling around doing nothing in life, all right? So setting clear goals, both financially, through budgeting, through investing, through increasing your income, through increasing your skill set. This is the stuff that makes the difference between someone who is living month to month and someone like myself who's constantly growing, constantly making more income, and also exploring new options. This is where you want to be, and it's not fun. Just need to have that discipline aspect that you can apply to your day-to-day life and be consistent in doing that. If you're to go buy a new car, are you buying that on finance? Are you buying a nicer car because the monthly finances are low? Or realistically, could you just buy a run-around car on a day-to-day basis that's going to save you a couple of £100 a month? Before you know it, you've just made an extra 2 grand in a year. You're in a much better financial position, and the car ultimately does the same job of getting you from A to B. And so there's this part of you that needs to take a step back and realize that if you want to be in this position in the future, you're going to have to make sacrifices now so that you can have those nice things in the future. And that is all to do with budgeting, future planning, and understanding that. And these are all skills that are super simple to understand, but I'm telling you, apply it and you'll be so surprised with how you can perform in the future. FOMO, the fear of missing out, this applies to 2 different aspects, your lifestyle and also the investment space. From a lifestyle perspective, you know, if you've got a good return on your investment, sometimes you go, I want to buy that Rolex, I want to treat myself. Try not to treat yourself. Do something small, go out for a nice meal, but don't go and spend that money on a 10, 12 grand Rolex when you could reinvest that money again for that long-term future goal. So FOMO, try to make sure you hold back on the lifestyle side of things and don't rise to the social media lifestyle and trying to put out your best life. Sit back, it's the quiet, consistent results that you want to focus on achieving. And with that in mind, the fear of missing out is also relevant to the financial markets. So a lot of people have been obviously talking about, you know, the rise of these cryptocurrencies that you can buy in the markets and don't be missing out, and that's the feeling that you have. But sometimes buying into an S&P ETF or buying into a REIT is actually going to produce more long-term comfortable returns for you that are consistent at a lower risk level, and ultimately again move you in your goal in a consistent manner in the future to be able to look after yourself. You know, if you want to produce, say, 100k a year from your investments where you don't have to do anything else, then ultimately your cash target will probably be about £1 million. How can I get to £1 million that produces a 10% yield that's going to pay me 100k a year interest so that I can sit on my ass and play Call of Duty and not worry about doing anything else? That is the ultimate win that you want to be in the quickest space possible with also the lowest amount of risk. So FOMO, Be careful with FOMO because you don't want to get drawn into that lifestyle of missing out on things. And also from an investment space, don't be investing into those high risky assets, because as soon as they drop, let's say you're in 30 or 40% drawdown, you're probably going to panic and cut your losses. And we all know that Warren Buffett has stated that the markets is simply taking money from the impatient and giving it to the patient. And these are people that we want to listen to, and those are the people that you should be aspiring to. Overall, I mean, look at Warren Buffett's lifestyle. He had the cheap car, done the same thing, going from A to B. He also got the jet later on in life, and he still lives in the same house that he lived at when he initially started doing all of his investment side of things. And this is crucial to understand, is that you can take that sacrifice now to have that long-term goal in the future. So I suppose, guys, I want to dare you to be bigger and better than what you are right now by setting up all of these points that we have discussed. And ultimately, I want you to get in the comments and tell me exactly what is your monetary goal target that you're trying to achieve. Where do you want to be in 10 years from now? Because these are the questions that you need to be asking yourself, because it's going to creep up on you very quickly. And I think the ultimate goal really should be to avoid and escape the whole rat race within a 10-year window. How can you do that? How can you set aside and budget to be able to achieve that? And I ultimately think you've got to be honest and blunt with yourself of what you want and what your life is going to look like within a 10-year window, and also in the most stress-free, attainable way that you can achieve that. So these are some of the habits of a millionaire, some of the points that I hope that you avoid, like I got caught up in, of splashing out continuously, when actually in hindsight that could have advanced my career and progression a lot quicker to get to the goal that I wanted to get to. I wish you all the best, and I hope that you can take some of these points of millionaire habits and apply them to your life. Hit like, hit the subscribe button, get in the comments of what your monetary goal is to hit.